Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So we have been doing a lot of podcasts related to product management and we have been inviting a lot of people from different industries. So today I have some interesting person from a very new industry, that is Web3, right? Which is being evolving. Thanks a lot Amani for coming here. So first, if you can give a quick introduction to our audience.
Thank you for having me, Manoj. I'm just really glad to be here. As he mentioned, I'm Amani, I'm 23 and I'm from Delhi. I'm a Delhi University grad. I largely have 2.5 years of work ex. As he mentioned, I'm currently working at Polygon Labs as a product manager. But before Polygon Labs, I was working at this edtech startup called Frontro. I was there at Frontro for 1 year and then Polygon 1.5 years so far. So that's practically what my journey has been like.
Interesting. So as you're working in Polygon, right? So Polygon is into Web3. So I want to start with a very basic thing for our audience. So what is the difference between Web2 versus Web3?
Web3 is like an entire new blockchain technology. But to rephrase, if you're asking about difference between how to approach product management in Web2 versus Web3, I think the basics kind of remain the same in the sense that it still requires a lot of stakeholder management. It still requires a lot of user-centric design. It still requires a lot of market research. But the biggest difference that I see in Web2 versus Web3 is how we approach data. Like when I was working at Frontro, the data of the users is something that we had. That's something that every Web2 company tends to. Every user has, let's say, an associated user ID. We know their journey on a specific app or a specific website, depending on, whatever the specific product is that you're managing. But in Web3, every data is a public point in the sense that because everything is on the blockchain, it can be accessed by everyone. For example, if I send a certain amount of crypto money from X blockchain to Y blockchain, and if I do that through, let's say, an EVM compatible chain, an Ethereum compatible chain, that's something that anyone can get access to of an understanding from, let's say, Etherscan. From that lens, I think data is much more fluid. It's much more open and it's much more complicated to decipher in the sense of Web3 as compared to Web2. And that's the biggest difference that I largely see in both the fields.
And the next question I have is like, is there any specific qualifications to become a product manager, right? Because it has been evolving a lot. So first, MBA grads used to become product manager, and there's no specialized any degree to get into product management. So what are your views on that?
I'm not a big fan of PM degrees. How there's some diploma courses or some specific courses that universities offer that for 6 months as a product course that you can do and then you can get into product management. I feel they're helpful to an extent, but PM is a very, very practical job because no product is the same. So the way that you approach every product needs to keep on changing. It's not one skill or one tool that you've now understood how to use and then you can master product management. It's extremely evolving in that sense. But to kind of agree with you, if someone has an MBA or someone is coming from an engineering background, I would agree that they do have a slight upper hand because some traditional companies still, refer to resumes. They use AI tools to kind of filter out resumes who kind of, let's say, don't have, let's say, a bachelor's degree in technology or an MBA, etc. So I think they tend to do have an upper hand also because they're like placements that can directly get you a product job. I have personally chosen a very non-traditional way to go about it. I was from Delhi University and I've been a huge fan of humanities. I still am. So I was a humanities grad at large. And I had like a 3 year degree. And towards the end of my degree, I realized, like every 18-year-old, that this is not something I want to do for the rest of my life. So I interned at a couple of companies. Frontro happened to be one of them. I did a product internship there, got my first job into product from there on, and then ended up landing in Polygon after the year. I agree that MBAs and being from engineering can help you better because you already would have a business sense or you would have the tech sense that you would require to become a product manager. But because I've chosen an unconventional path and I'm still a product manager, I think it's also possible to gather those understandings from elsewhere, from smaller cohorts, from YouTube courses, from, just blogs, newsletters, etc. Build your portfolio that way, build your proof of work that way, and then also venture into PM. So no specific degree that I would recommend because I don't come from a degree per se, but I do agree that with degree you get some, some slight leverage, and without a degree you need to kind of work on yourself consciously more.
I think your journey is interesting, right? Like you were from humanity and then came into product management. And just a quick curiosity on this, like what were the problems you had? Let's say as you are from humanity, you would not have understanding about technology, business. Like how did you upskill or how did you get there?
So I was political science grad. I think I still love the subjects of humanities. It's something that does intrigue me a lot. When I just joined college, I realized after 6 months into it that, it's not something I see myself doing for, let's say, 10 years from now, etc. So I started in general venturing into a lot of different things. This may just be a DU thing, and I'm not sure if other universities have this, but we had like tons of societies, and there was that club culture or that society culture that still prevails in Delhi University. So I was doing content for some, sponsorships for some, research. I was leading social impact projects. So I think a lot of things I just did outside of my four-walled classrooms to just grab a sense of the basics of business side of things in general. And I wanted to kind of venture into the startup world because this world was just very interesting through everything that I ventured into outside of it and the internships that I did. Given that I was not from a quote unquote tech background, to grab like a tech job, which is the most demanded job in startups, is not something that was valid. And product management kind of offered a soft spot because it also requires you to be strong on research. It also requires you to be very, very user centric. And those were the pointers that I was largely stronger at. And tech is something that I hence developed through working. I think I gained a lot of practical knowledge. And I have to honestly give the credit to people in my first job to kind of be patient with me, to make me understand the basics of what is an API, what is the difference between front end and back end, how those teams operate in general. I think they were very patient and kind of grooming me also because I was at the same time providing them skills that were stronger on my part, and the other things is something that's cultivated over the entire year.
Interesting, right? Like you took initiatives first, you explored, got to know about different opportunities, and then you upskill practically too. So the next question I have is like, what according to you are the top skills expected from a associate product manager?
If you just say associate product manager, I'm assuming you're referring to someone who's just in the first year of PM or just about to break into PM, because APM is what you get started with. You don't directly get a PM job. So from that lens, one thing that I would very strongly emphasize on that I don't think people do in general is curiosity, because that's something that led me to be wherever I am. That's something that's the great trait to have in all product managers. The colleagues that I worked with that were incredible product managers, this is one thing that largely drove them, because PM largely is in center of business, it's in center of tech, it's in center of marketing. So it's not like they need to have a lot of horizontal span of knowledge. It's okay for them to not have vertical span of knowledge, which is in-depth knowledge about one specific topic, but PMs at large need to be generalists. You can't become a product manager if you're not a generalist. So coming from that lens, I feel like curiosity is a huge skill, and it's a human skill. I don't think it's a skill that is something that you can acquire through a course, etc. But to give more tactical skills, I think there needs to be some basics of design and tech that you need to know. There's basics of research that you also need to know, both market and user research, and how to approach both of them. There's basics of data that you need to know. So it can be both analytics tools, which practically tracks the front end events, which is the user journeys at large that you see, and then the backend data in sense of SQL, for example. I think those basics of those skills are like really key to become a PM. And lastly would just be documentation. I feel like you need to be really strong on documentation, because a lot of times, even if you can't travel and talk to 10 people at once, your document will go ahead and talk to those 10 people to, let's say, align those stakeholders to make them understand what you wanted to convey. The kind of feature that gets built out is actually very, very driven on what is the kind of PRD that you've provided to the designer or the engineer. So you need to be strong on the documentation side of things.
And a cross question I have is, let's say, as you moved from an associate product manager to a product manager role, right, after 1 or 2 years. So what are the skills you saw? Yeah, this I need to upskill more, or this something that's required more. So what is the change you saw when you got like 1 2 year experience? Like what was a new skill that you wanted to learn and improve?
I think honestly, and it depends from company to company. But in my experience, when you're an EPM, things are slightly easier for you because you're an individual contributor, despite being someone who is leveraging into a lot of different fields. So you're a generalist in the sense that you're understanding about different fields and you're kind of ensuring that your product reflects all of that But when you're a product manager, A, you need to have all the skills that I mentioned for APM. That's something that you can't miss out. But in addition to that, you also need to have a lot of strategic thinking, which is, let's say, road mapping, prioritization of a feature and how to go about it. Because let's say the work of the designers and developers largely depend on your prioritization. So if those are not strong enough for you, then you're not only impacting your work, you're also impacting your team's work, which is really crucial. And largely leadership. I feel like that's something that I felt I had to cultivate after switching from an APM to a PM role, because I currently don't have APMs under me, but PMs, let's say with 3 to 4 to 5 years of experience, would have APMs under them or product interns under them. And that's how largely the structures have been built. So I think leadership is something that does not come as a part and parcel of the job. It's not something that, again, courses would teach you. It's something that would come practically, but it's something that is extremely important once you've ventured into a couple of years and you need to kind of understand how to manage your team. And lastly, I think stakeholder management. With APMs, you kind of are relying on your product heads or your senior PMs, etc., to go ahead with things and align the for future stakeholders. But when you are, let's say, at a higher PM position, then how to deal with marketing, how to deal with legal, how to deal with business stakeholders, operation stakeholders is something that is a very crucial part and becomes more of a people job than just a research job. So I think those are the skills that any PM after a couple of years should inculcate in themselves.
Just to summarize, the first main thing is you move from a kind of an individual contributor to a team contributor, where not only your work will impact even others' work. And second is having manage more stakeholders, communicate with them better, and take ownership and become a good leader, right? So that's what you become when you like go up the ladder from a APM to a P. The next question I had is what are the common tools used by a product manager, right? Because as a PM, you might do a lot of things, like you might communicate, you might analyze with people, and in general, there are different kinds of tools to use by companies, right? So what are the common themes of tools and what are the popular ones that you have used?
Awesome. I will start with my most favorite tool. I think I'll bucket them into why these tools are used. So if I start with documentation tools, I use Notion the most. It's my favorite tool because it has a lot of templates that are helpful. It helps with a lot of in-team collaboration, etc. And I'm a huge fan of proper documentation, so I would give Notion a shout out. So that plus Google Docs, if you're someone who is your company is like using the Google Suite, then probably that. If you are given that you're a product manager, there's one thing that you would have to do is manage sprints at large. Even if you're an APM, if you're not managing sprints at large, you're at least taking part in sprints on a very regular basis. So for sprints, I think largely the tools that I use is Jira, like Atlassian's tools in general, Trello, and then we also internally use Notion to track our tickets in general. So Jira, Trello, Notion for the sprint management at large. For given that we're a remote team, we work a lot with videos and kind of video mock-ups of understanding how X has gone to Y, etc. Let's say if a designer has to make me understand that this is the prototype and this is how it looks, or I need to make them understand a wireframe. Or times we would record videos and batch those videos and then send those across. If we have feedback about a product and we want a UX to be better or some bug that we have identified, we'd send videos to each other because we work in remote. So for that, it's either Loom, which is also by Atlassian, or Bubble. Bubble is actually a great underused tool. I think everyone should use that, but it serves the same purpose. Then it's analytics tools for like tracking front-end events largely, depending on whatever your company tracks. So we currently use Google Analytics for the same. In my previous company, we were very heavy on Mixpanel and CleverTap. I'm a huge fan of Mixpanel. I feel like it's more intuitive than any of the other tools. A general understanding of like analytics tools is very important. With respect to analytics, as I mentioned, that SQL is a great skill to have. I've used Metabase at large for SQL. Companies may use something else as well, but I feel like Metabase is something that is more widely used and also like way understandable in terms of data and data-driven insights at large. And when it comes to data, I think what's not as talked about is Excel, especially if you're using the Google Suite. Excel is a great skill to master. You should know the basics of Figma because I'm not sure if designers are using anything else but Figma at this day and age. So basics of Figma is great. Then for wireframing, the tool that I personally use a lot and would recommend is Miro. But there are more tools like Miro that you can use if your company is using them. For example, there's Draw, there is FigJam and stuff like that. So I think that's helpful as well. There's Whimsical. Whimsical is great too. It's very intuitive. That's largely for wireframes and which are low fidelity, in which you kind of, let's say, need to attach in the PRD or make your designers understand the user flows, etc. If you're collecting data or surveys or doing a user research, then probably Typeform, SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, depending on whatever your team uses. I think that's a great way to kind of collect insights so you can look at it largely. Towards the end, we personally at Polygon use Twitter a lot. We all have a profile on Twitter. We all are constantly on Twitter because it's just that news is on there more than LinkedIn or any other social platform. But that's very Web3 driven. It's okay for Web2 PMs to not be on Twitter as much, honestly.
I think thanks a lot. It was a very great summarization, right? You told all the categories and told like why the tools are used and what are the tools. And yeah, my favorite tool is Whimsical personally. Uh, like I'm a power user of Whimsical. So great.
Nice.
So as you
Nice.
also mentioned about Twitter, right? So I was curious, like, okay, in Web2 product management, it's like the data is with the company. It's not like public, right? The user cannot see like what data are collected, etc. Transparency is more in Web3, right? So was curious to know how do PMs do user research in Web3, right? As they have already lot of users and it's more community driven too. So how does user research change between Web 2 and Web 3?
I don't say this lightly. I feel like it's way easier to do that in Web2. And I say this because I had a very, very easy access to my users in Web2. Let's say you need to do a root cause analysis and you need to understand that, okay, X number of people are coming to the checkout page, but only Y percentage are actually, completing their payment. And you need to understand this drop off, that why is it happening. You need to kind of analyze the root cause. It's so easy in Web2 to kind of just grab the amount of users in the middle over a period of time, a week, a month, etc. Grab their user IDs, understand if they have a phone number associated with it, depending if your app is tracking that or not. If they have an email associated, depending again if your app is tracking that or not. And just reach out to these users directly to understand their issues. It's as straightforward as I can put it across. And it's something that I don't think PMs realize the value of. And if someone has made the transition between Web2 to Web3, they would. Because as you mentioned in Web3, even if the data is all public, it's not as readable to a layman. It's not as easily comprehensible to a layman. So it is then again something that requires a lot of community understanding. And as you mentioned, it's a great thing in Web3 that we have clusters and communities of power users. We at Polygon have a bunch of advocates, guild majors that are practically the power users for us. For me, the user research, let's say if I'm just about to build a product, it's not yet built, and I need to kind of do some market research, understand if this is even important. Within the community, would you check out a bunch of power users, let's say 10, 15, 20 users, let's say give them either early access or give them a version of the product or just give a survey of the product and saying this is what we're planning to launch. Is this something you would require in the future? And my personal team we're very heavy on developer experience. And let's say we need to build out a tool at large, it would come with a lot of surveys and data with these community power users saying that, hey, we're planning to build something like this. What are the problems that you're facing currently with this particular use case? How are you currently solving those problems? What is the way for you to, is this something that you pay for currently to solve? Is this something that comes easy to you? Is this something that doesn't seem like a problem at all? So I think it is very community driven in that sense that we pick and choose users that we have access to through Discord, through Twitter, through Telegram, wherever the community lies. And they're just gracious enough to help us out and make us understand the problem statements, and then we go and building from there. So because it's whatever we build is for the community, also because I think I speak from very Polygon perspective because Polygon is a blockchain in itself. So whatever Polygon Labs builds out, it needs to be for the community so that for them, let's say if we're building for developers, they should have an easy way to build on top of Polygon. And that's something that we need to enable. That's something that we as a team need to ensure is coming out well. So I think from that understanding, community is something that helps us in a much, much more cohorted way than any other users in the Web2 ecosystem.
The thing you told was interesting, right? In Web3, you don't have the exact user details. You just have the wallet ID or something that's not readable. So now I'm understanding like how the Web 2 product managers are good. They have like very specific details so they can directly reach out to users. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's slightly easier that way. I think they should leverage that more.
The next thing I have is like, what were your interview rounds, right, at Front Row as well as at Polygon?
Honestly, at front row, given that I was an intern, my first interviews were of interns. I think apart from just the I'll just eliminate the cultural HR rounds in general. The two rounds that I remember the most, and both were very unconventional. They were not like I'm not a Flipkart PM or an Amazon PM for me to have like a for 10,000 rounds and have very, very technical rounds. But for front row, I think both of the companies, because they have such startup mindsets, they just wanted people who had a knack for a couple of things, and even if they didn't, they should have the knack of understanding and learning. And that's what both of them largely wanted, or any smaller, slightly smaller company would largely look out for. Chantam was like a ed tech, so they've sold a lot of courses. So one of the interview rounds that I had initially as an intern was one music community that we have on the app, because these are the four music courses that we sell. Let's say you're the PM leading this music community. How would you go on by scaling this community from 0 users, let's say we're just starting up the community, to 1,000 users? And how would you phase that out? And in the entire roadmap of when do you see that happening? 6 months from now, 1 year from now? And if yes, then what is your plan for that entire duration? And that was largely what got me into Trantro, because with intern I had, let's say, some rapport already built with the people when I wanted to transition into a full-time role. One of the key questions when I was transitioning was, it was as simple and as complicated as how would you sell this course? They were like a hobby learning platform. So I remember they had one recorded courses with Swan and Kirkire. And he said, let's say if you're the PM for that particular, entire duration in that particular version, how would you go on by selling this course now that, the shooting is done, the production is done, and now PM needs to come into the picture? And that was a great question because A, it was very open-ended. And B, it was a very long-term question because you, as a edtech company, you can't stop selling a course. Of course, you can if you want, choose to discontinue it. But in the future, if that's a course that's always on the app and you're the PM responsible for that even 2 years from now, that's something that would come under your radar. So it went from growth and sales and marketing to how would you improve on the course at large, to the whole post sales funnel and how would you keep the community engaged. So I think that was a very holistic question in that sense. With respect to Polygon, I think it was apart from the culture rounds, because I also was like, I already networked with a couple of people at Polygon. So apart from the culture round, I also didn't come from an understanding of Web3 that was as strong a year and a half ago. So it was honestly, again, as open-ended as, if you had to build any Web3 product, how would you go about it? And I just need you to present a PRD to me. So instead of a PRD, because I was so new to it and I had so much nuances to experience once I started to learn, I ended up creating a deck. And that deck had market research, why does this need to be built? I basically built like a ripoff of OpenSea and like a competitor of OpenSea, which is an NFT marketplace. What is the persona mapping? Which are the kind of users that will practically use it? Why do we think this needs to be built out? There were low-fee wireframes on Miro end-to-end and how the flows would look like. There was market research, the specific USP that that marketplace would have that OpenSea and other marketplaces currently don't. And at the end, the KPIs that we'll track, like how do we understand that this is successful? These are the metrics that we should look out for on a monthly basis to understand where the product is going. So I think largely that's what got me into Polygon. And the great thing about both of these is that both of them had very seemingly simple but complicated open-ended questions, where, because the question is, it would seem like say straightforward, but once you start to dig deep, which is what every PM's job is practically to do, you wouldn't uncover so much that you can do in the entire journey. That is something that the interviewer is trying to also gauge from your answers. So that was a great learning from that perspective as well.
I think the more ambiguous the question is, right, the more open-ended it might seem easy, but when you start answering, it becomes tougher, like when cross questions are asked, etc., right? That was something interesting. Yeah. The next thing I had is I've seen you creating content on LinkedIn, Instagram, and you also have your Substack blog, right? So what is the importance of being active on LinkedIn and creating content, right, as a product manager?
I'll be very honest. I feel that this is important in spite of the fact that you're a product manager or not. I feel that especially where content is today, with respect to where it was 5 years from now, there's a huge difference, and creator economy is at such a boom that it wasn't before. Um, my life goal is never having to write a resume, honestly. Like my personal brand should be enough, and I should have created enough and content is a great way to venture into a stronger personal brand. So every employee, no matter what they are, if let's say they're in growth, they're in marketing, they're in sales, they're someone in tech, everyone should practically have a stronger personal brand, and hence creating content is something that is an easy venture to have that strongly. I do that personally because it brings me a lot of joy. I honestly have no other instance that I give you because I just really enjoy the process so much. So there's a couple of areas where I create content, as you mentioned. With respect to Instagram, it's video content, short 1.5 minute videos, and I'm doing it with a fellow product manager colleague of mine who is also, a friend of mine in front row. It's called Working with Coffee, where we're practically exploring. It's both fun and educational, where we're practically exploring the basics of, let's say, product management. How do you approach GTM? What is the difference between a Web2 versus Web3 product manager? What is the difference between a B2B versus a B2C product manager? Then fun content around startups, etc. It's just so creative as a process that I enjoy creating that content. On Substack, on newsletter, I have honestly always wanted to venture into writing. It's something that I feel is I would not say my forte, but something that I really look forward to doing. I look forward to writing very, very often. And that's where the newsletter largely emerged from, where the first section is notions and narratives, where I'm talking about the startup world, the tech world, and my understanding of it and my opinions about it. Second section is usually of recommended reads, which is okay, I have read this and I found this extremely insightful. There was this wireframe, there was this market research, there was this acquisition that fell off, for example, and this is something that I feel you should read as well. And the last section is where I'm just writing my musings and my journals and how to kind of just relate with the audience more. To kind of sum up your question, I really do enjoy creating content. It's coming out of my love for the process and my love for putting my creative self out there, and at the same time it's something that I feel people should venture into if they want to create their personal brand, irrespective of being a PM or not.
I think the one thing that really catch this you told, right? I don't want to create resume. My personal brand should be able to help me get the next gig or job or anything, right? That's something interesting. Like you get more inbound or you have a personal brand, it becomes easy for you in so many things instead of standing in the queue. So I would attach all the links in the description, guys. You can check the Instagram and Substack of. The next question I had is, so do you have any tips for, let's say, for freshers who just want to break into product management, get their first internship, especially in two areas, right? One is job search. Two is how can they build their resume?
Okay, I feel like my goal is that I don't want to have a resume, so I'm anyway not a big fan of resumes. I would go out on a limb here and say that I would rather not have a resume at all. But I understand that it's important for a lot of job searches. It's important for you to grab a job, and it's not something you can disregard, especially when you're just breaking into PM. One thing that your resume should always have is your proof of work. For example, if let's say even if you're just a college grad who's venturing into PM, wants a product internship or wants something to be wants like an APM job, etc. It should come with a lot of proof of work in the sense that what have you done in your college life? Are there internships that you can attach? What are the projects of the internship? And what are the so I was a part of this college society called Enactus, which was a social entrepreneurship society. So there was a lot of I was a project manager there. So there were a lot of social impact projects that I led that I could talk about in my first product interview. And that really helped me get my first gig as an intern and then as a full-time employee. So I feel like in whatever way you've done a proof of work so far and you can present it across, that'll be really, really helpful. With respect to getting a job, one thing that's talked about enough but not in a tactical way is cold DMs and cold emails. I feel like why it's not tactical at the moment is because people choose to cold DMs HRs or people who are recruiting. It should always go to someone who is at a slightly higher position in the org. For example, if I am I want to get into a PM position at a particular company, I should be reaching out to their head of product, their VP of product, even the founder if it's a small startup. Let's say if it's a very small startup within like 50 folks, and the startup and the founder has a good personal brand, then it's okay to reach out the founder directly. I feel like those cold DMs, if that is done creatively, can really really be helpful. My first gig, I then again got through in cold email. That's something that I would, suggest everyone to continue doing. Another thing, if you're just getting a job and you don't have the background for it, and I'm just talking from experience, is that create a list of the startups that you'd like to work at. It's a harsh truth that if you're not coming from a certain background, if you don't have an MBA, for example, it's hard to get placed into a bigger company. For example, if I was just starting off as a political science graduate from Delhi University and expecting a APM position at Google, it's hard for me to get it as compared to, someone who has an MBA and whose college can probably place them at a, frank company. So I feel like it's like you should aim high, but at the same time, you should ground yourself to the reality and understand what are the opportunities for you at the moment. See, the opportunities that were there for me at the moment were venturing into startups and learn as much as I can to aim, even higher and getting a, better job at a bigger company, yada yada. So make a list of the startups that you know, startups that you've researched about. Understand what do you like about the startup in general? Are you even aligned with the vision? And then kind of start reaching out to those startups to just start with volunteering and interning. So you're into that ecosystem and then climb the ladder from there. I feel like that's a much more tactical way to go about it if you're coming from a very new perspective and you just want to venture into PM. And lastly, which is a great tip in general, is to continuously network. If you have the privilege to live in cities like Bangalore, I'm not living in Bangalore, so I miss out on a lot of events. But in case, let's say you're living in Bangalore already, ensure that you're attending networking events, you're attending meetups, you're attending anything which is kind of making you get closer to that entire cluster of people and giving you that exposure in general. Because a lot of people who do get proper jobs is through referrals, is through acquaintances, are through suggestions, and those are the best kind of jobs because they, give some backing to you and they help you in getting shortlisted much more easily. And if you don't have that network for yourself, start building that through networking. If you're not living in Bangalore like me, then it's great to do that online. Continuously reach out to people online without an intention of getting a job, but just an intention of learning more, getting to know them, and being added in the network. I feel that's a really helpful tip in general if you're just starting out.
I think thanks a lot for explaining everything in detail, right? So just to summarize, one is cold emailing, two is networking, and also thinking of like what is a company that you like and are you aligned with their vision, and then applying for those companies and building proof of work, right? Yeah, this helps a lot. But apart from that, one thing in product management is it depends upon the stage of the company industry also. The work changes a lot for a PM. The time he spends. So if it's a very early stage company, the PM would spend more time on market research, user research, in understanding the whys, what to build, etc. Right? So how does your day look like as a product manager at Polygon?
As a product manager at Polygon, a lot of my days start with sprints, honestly. So with respect to sprints, it's either sprint tracking or sprint planning on that particular day. With respect to sprint tracking, it's basically getting together with the team. It honestly depends on the culture of the company. We get together once a week or twice a week, I think. A lot of companies have this daily habit of having, like, say, a morning stand up. In my previous company, we had a stand up every day. Some companies do it bi-weekly, whatever suits them. So I think first starts off from there with respect to tracking of which tasks from your particular projects are in line, which tasks are getting out of line, etc. Then it is sprint planning, which is something that product managers need to be very, very strongly involved in. A lot of times it's either with the head of product or with the engineering manager, depending on, what the status of the company is. So from that angle, it is both, in short, so we have like an agile system in which we kind of are continuously checking out the backlog, ensuring that things have story points assigned to them. There's a specific bandwidth that's allocated to all the engineers and designers. So there's a lot of, operational planning that goes into that largely. Then parallelly looking at data and understanding what are the new things apart from the backlog that we'd like to put in the sprint. And a lot of times they're driven by research and data with respect to, okay, in the last 2 weeks, we realized this is the insight that came, this is the feedback that came, this is the data we were able to capture, and hence this is a bug that, let's say, we encountered largely in the last 2 weeks, and we need to bring that in. So then it is sprint planning for the next 2 weeks. Again, the duration of the sprint is something that is depending from company to company. In both of my companies, we used to run a 2 week sprint. We've experimented with 1 week, and that didn't turn out to be very well because it was very short a duration. But 2 weeks, in my opinion, works the best way for all the stakeholders involved. So I think it's largely, that. Then it's a lot of documentation. It's a lot of stakeholder management. I feel like at Polygon, especially, the legal and the marketing teams are way more intertwined than what they used to be at Front Row. And I think it's again the nature of the company. Front Row PMs never had to interact with the legal team. But with Polygon, nothing can practically go out without, let's say, a scrutiny or a go ahead, a green flag from a legal team. Similarly, with marketing, marketing was a separate section altogether at Frontier, and I was looking at the post purchase funnel. So I was less interactive with the marketing and the growth teams. But here, that's increased way more, where I'm helping them with market research, I'm helping them plan the GTM. I'm planning GTM myself for a couple of products if they're like, let's say, smaller launches. So I think that has changed largely, where the marketing, the growth, legal roles have increased a lot, and that's what my day largely goes in. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what it looks like.
The next question I had is like, okay, do you have any recommendation of resources or any courses or product leaders you follow to learn product management? And also, if someone wants to just learn about basics of Web3, are there any resources just to start with Web3?
Great. Something that helped me personally, which is again an unconventional resource, is join a community. And this is for both Web2 and Web3. For Web3, join a DAO. For Web2, join a product community. I was a part of the product folks for over 2 years. I still work with them on and off. I was leading marketing and growth for them. But because it was largely, a product community, it was already a network of people that I could interact with. Plus, they were just organizing cohorts so often. They were organizing these sessions so often with these existing product leaders. It was just better for me to be a part of that ecosystem because I got that exposure through the community. Similarly, it happens with a lot of DAOs. If, let's say, you're a part of a DAO, then if they're organizing any AMA sessions, if they're organizing any Twitter spaces, you're already a part of that ecosystem and you get this exposure without consciously wanting to get that exposure. And that helps with a lot of learning. So if you're just starting out, then consider doing this. With respect to more tactical resources, if you're someone like me who does not have a lot of background about tech and who had to learn tech through practical knowledge or through resources, then Tech for PMs by Hello PM is actually a great resource for you to get started with. For RCAs, like root cause analysis and mock interviews, there's this YouTube channel I'd recommend called Exponent. I feel like they're doing a great job. They are actually not from India, but they get like a couple of PMs from India plus the West, so you kind of get an understanding of both. There's Product School. Product School has a lot of videos and podcasts about, interviews and how to approach these interview questions. If you're someone who's into reading, then I would suggest reading Inspired and the Mom Test. Inspired, I think it gives you like a larger understanding of product management and why you should venture. And the Mom Test is something that would help a lot with user and market research. Another unconventional book that I'd recommend, which is not a it's not a product management book, but it's a product book, is this book called Build by Tony Fadell. It is something that gives a great insight of how to build great products, what impact can they have, how to manage different kind of managers, different kind of stakeholders, and the person like Tony Fadell's journey at large, which is like really interesting to read. So just some resources that I feel every PM should go ahead and check out.
Thanks a lot for summarizing all the resources and also telling like a combination of courses, blogs, and the community one was really interesting. Like when you join a community, you get to interact with different people from whom you can learn a lot. And the last question I have is, okay, so now there's a lot of new technological development happening, generative AI, Web3. So how do you see the impact of the AI on product management role?
Product management is such a people job that even if AI has to take away jobs, PM was not going to be one of it. I feel like a lot of companies have actually dissolved PM roles, like Airbnb, Stripe, etc. Apple even. They don't have like stronger product managers. They have product managers plus PMMs that becomes one clusters, or they just have tech and design team and someone from that team takes the lead for that one particular sprint and they go ahead from there. It's very culture driven in that sense, but just with respect to AI, if you're asking me AI will replace PMs or not, my answer is no. But I feel like AI can actually help product managers. AI helps me a lot with research. AI helps me a lot with wireframing. AI helps a lot with me with documentation at large. So I think just surveys and understanding them better. So I feel like from that understanding, AI is actually a bane for product managers, um, given that we're anyway generalists and we all also need to kind of in parallel learn in depth about a certain topic here and there depending on the company and the structure. And AI only facilitates for you to do that better. Plus, AI will create a lot of jobs in the next 5 years. I feel like there was a survey led by PwC that said the same, that around 91% of working professionals are already using AI to help with their current jobs. And this number was way less in Japan and France, which means that in India, it's something that's already, leading in the sense that if you're not into an AI role or if your startup is not AI driven, even then you're using AI to kind of help with your daily roles. And I think that's helpful for product managers to a very large extent.
Got it. I think the one you told, right? AI will act as a more like a companion, helping product managers to get their work done faster with perfection. And also, I also saw there's new roles like AI product manager that's been coming in companies like Tesla, Google, and all who are focusing on building AI products. Yeah, that's something interesting that AI will create new kind of PM jobs, like new types of PM. Yeah. I think thanks a lot, Amani, for explaining everything clearly. It was great having you in my podcast, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. There's just one last thing I'd like to say. There's another initiative that I run in which it's called Nerds and Notes at Large. So it started off with just a community where you can share reads about the start of the tech world, and if you want to join, kind of just DM me. But why I'm bringing this up is because through that I came across a lot of people who want to venture into PM. And it's something that I felt grew a lot in the last 2 years, especially after the pandemic. It's an industry that existed for the last 10 years, but only was in the chatter for the last 2 to 3 years. So there are a lot of people who were either existing professionals who want to venture into PM or someone who wants to break into it initially. So what I'm trying to do is that I have a bank of some senior product managers from reputed companies. And I feel like what these people don't get on a very regular basis is mentorship. So I help, these people who want to venture into PM or just have doubts around there is tips that they want for resume, mock interviews, if they just have general doubts about product management, if they want their LinkedIn profile scanned, if that's good enough or not, and stuff like that. Whatever is product driven, these SPMs would on a one-on-one 30-minute call help them out with it, and I kind of help do this matchmaking and set this up. And goes without saying that all of this is free of cost because they're doing it on a just to give back to the community that has given them so much. So if someone is also interested in that, they can reach out to me on Twitter or my LinkedIn, and I can set this 30-minute session up for them, and we can, probably, I hope I'm able to help them in some way or the other.
I think that's a very great initiative that will help a lot of people, even early PMs, right? When they want to upskill in their career ladder and aspiring PMs. Yeah, that's a very great initiative. Thanks a lot for running it. Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.